set, roll.
Okay. So I grew up here in Washington, from University Place. It's basically part next to Tacoma.
Mhm.
And I grew up there my whole life. And then for undergraduate studies, I went to Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah. And there I studied. So I always knew I wanted to go into dentistry and be involved with the research. And trying to decide what major to do. A lot of dentists said they wish they knew more business, and so I figured business would be beneficial in anything I do in terms of managing people and things like that. And so I did a major in business management, and then did science research in molecular biology, and did an honors thesis for that. So that was a great experience. And then I applied, and I went to dental school here at the University of Washington, and I was accepted to the dual DDS PhD program. So it's a 8-year program, and you get your DDS and your PhD at the end of that. And the way our program works, they're different all around the country. Actually, most of them, you do your PhD first, then your DDS. And the reasons I hear for that is they don't want you to get your DDS and then take off and start making money. And so, but our school does it that way, and we've had 100% commitment to finishing the PhD. So I finished my DDS in 2015, and since then I've been working on my PhD project. And the ARCS was a real blessing to me, because when you do this joint program, the school's part of an NIH-funded program where they help pay for your dental school, because it's so expensive. The average debt coming out of dental school is around $300,000. And so in order to help you do that, to be able to do research, they help fund that. But mine was cut because of, I don't know exactly why, but mine was cut short. And so it was when I was about ready to graduate from dental school and start my major PhD work, and I was like, well, now what do I do? I don't have any funding. Then the ARCS came, and that really helped me, because it allowed me to get started and start getting my work done. So that was a real blessing for me. I'm not sure how things worked out if that didn't come about. And so what I'm researching is the causes of midfacial hypoplasia and how it affects breathing. So midfacial hypoplasia is basically just deficient growth of the face, so the upper jaw and nose. And it can be an isolated occurrence or part of a syndrome, like Down syndrome or Treacher-Collins syndrome. These are syndromes that affect the whole head and face, and sometimes other parts of the body. And but in either case, it's when it includes the face, it's pretty much the same thing, whether it's being caused by a syndrome or just isolated to the face. And when it's isolated just to the face, usually everything's normal, except the main thing you notice is people that have their jaws don't match up right. It's kind of like a bulldog look, where the upper face didn't grow out normally, so it might look a little smushed, or the jaw might be too small, so the lower jaw extends out more than normal. And so I'm trying to figure out what's causing that, because we don't know what's causing that, and we don't even know what's the main mechanism of facial growth. So we know in the long bones in your limbs, we know how those grow, but we don't know what's pushing the face out. That's still something that there's a whole bunch of theories about that they don't know. I mean, the head and face is a really complex region. And so, some people say the only reason it grows out is because of functional demands, breathing and things like that others believe that it's just a matter of your bones growing, or others believe it's cartilage in your nose, that as the cartilage grows, it pulls the face forward. If you notice in little babies, their heads are pretty much developed except their face. So as someone ages from a child to adult, really their head doesn't increase in size that much, but it's just their face. It's pretty flat in a baby, but as you become an adult, it grows out and lengthens front to back. And so I'm studying kind of two things in my project will help address what's the main mechanism of growth, and in this condition, what's the cause? And this will be very beneficial in improving therapies. The current treatments are very invasive and not always successful. Over like 10 surgeries a child has to have throughout their lifetime to correct these facial deformities. So if we can somehow figure out what's causing it and prevent it early on, or come up with even improved, less invasive treatment, that'd be very beneficial. Now the second part of the project is, how is this affecting breathing? Because over 50% of these kids that have this condition have breathing problems, most notably obstructive sleep apnea. And this is another condition that we don't know what's causing it. It's associated with tons of things, one being skeletal malformations, others being obesity, and several others. And they don't know what's the primary cause of this. And so what I'm studying is what's the impact of skeletal growth on obstructing the airway. Because some people believe that it's a skeletal thing that's causing this airway obstruction, but no one knows why or how. And so I'm investigating that, because if I could find it's a primarily skeletal problem rather than a soft tissue problem, that would definitely change the way things are treated. Most things are treated with either these really crazy surgeries or CPAP. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's a mask you have to wear. If it's primarily a skeletal problem, CPAP might not be the best treatment, because that you're not fixing the underlying problem there. That's more, you're trying to open up the airway you're basically changing, it's a soft tissue problem rather than a skeletal problem. And so the way I'm trying to address these two concerns, both the cause and consequences on breathing, is I'm using a novel animal model. So there isn't really any good animal models for obstructive sleep apnea. For trying to figure out the cause of these skeletal deformities, there is mouse models. However, mice models are genetically altered to get the condition. There's no natural mouse that's just born with this condition. So they found some genes related to this condition, so they knocked those genes out, and the mice have this condition. But they're not a natural model, plus they're really small, so they don't really help for obstructive sleep apnea. So a pig model is a perfect model. So I'm using a pig as a model, and it's a perfect model for both the causes and also the consequences, because it's a large animal model that you can investigate the function, and it's very similar to humans. It's one of the most similar mammals besides primates, besides apes and monkeys. Pig is probably the next most common animal model to humans. And interestingly, we found a pig model that has both midfacial hypoplasia and obstructive sleep apnea. And it's never been used before to investigate this problem. which is very interesting because it's, you know, been around forever, since the 60s. This pig has been used in other research, like heart research and things. It's a natural pig found in Mexico, and even though people observe this condition, it's never been studied. So our lab's the first one to look at this, to use this pig as a model for these conditions. And so I've done a lot of dissection work and histology work trying to figure out what's causing this condition in the pig. And I've done a lot of breathing measurements. So we've used one of those take-home, it's basically like a take-home test for sleep apnea, where you hook up all these electrodes and do all these breathing parameters on the pig to diagnose it with sleep apnea. And then I've taken a lot of other types of breathing measurements. And what I've found is it looks like, in terms of the cause, it looks like it's a problem with the nasal cartilage. And so your cartilage runs all the way back underneath your head, basically. And it looks like the cartilage is mineralizing too soon. So it's disrupting the growth potential there. And then the causes, or the consequences on the airway, it looks like it could be caused to a problem with the ability to warm and humidify air. So your nose is supposed to humidify and warm your air before it gets to your lungs. And when you have a shortened, deformed nose, it can't do this properly. And it looks like it could be leading to increased size of the tonsils because of infection and inflammation. And interestingly, that's the number one cause of sleep apnea in children is enlarged tonsils. They don't know why, but it could be a problem with not being able to condition and humidify the air properly. So that's where I'm right now with the project.
Wow. Interesting. And I thought initially you said it was for young people particularly you were looking at with the breathing inhibitors? Or is it, when you talk about CPAPs, is that at all ages that you're looking at?
Yeah, it could be, it's all ages.
Okay.
CPAP's used in children all the way to adults.
Is it really?
Yeah.
But it's children that you're focusing on for the midfacial lack of development of the midfacial.
Yeah, because that's when all the surgeries have to take place.
So you've discovered that you get early mineralization of the cartilage in the pig model. If that turns out to be true, have you started speculating about how you might address that and maybe reduce that early mineralization? Is there a way to do that?
Yeah.
And other
So the next
medical
step
treatments?
is to figure out the molecules, the protein mediators that are causing that. And you can, once that's done, I need to do that plus do a genetic, like a DNA sequencing study to figure out what's happening to the DNA that's causing the change in these proteins. And then to confirm it, you can do, in this case, it's best to use mice for models, is to do a knockout to change these the DNA there to get this same condition in a mouse. That's how you would verify what's going on there. And then to see if it's happening in humans, so that's difficult because you can't do, it's difficult to do dissection studies on humans these days. I mean, you have to have, in really old research, they do cadaver studies on children that died of other causes. That's more difficult to do these days. But what you could do is look at CT scans and see if the cartilage is mineralizing in this same area. And then that would tell you if the same thing is happening in humans. And then if you're able to verify what genes or proteins were causing this, then you can address it that way.
Okay.
So it's kind of two steps you have to do there. But, yeah, it's a definite thing that could be done.
How common is it in young people to have this squished, or how you describe the facial deformity?
So it ranges between 5 and 15%, depending on the population. So Asians tend to have this condition in higher frequency than other populations, but it's generally between 5 and 15%. But the severity of it, it changes. So not all 15% would have it so severe that they would need severe,
Multiple surgeries?
yeah, extensive surgery to fix it. I mean, it would be an aesthetic thing that they may do it anyways, but it wouldn't compromise their airway.
And are the surgeries being done at Children's or here? Or?
Children's, yeah.
And what kind of doctor does that?
So
Is it
it's a craniofacial surgeon,
craniofacial surgery?
craniofacial maxillofacial surgeon.
Okay, for pediatric care.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're eventually, are you gonna ever do just plain old dentistry?
So I'm interested in orthodontics.
Oh,
And so that's why I'm interested in this research, because to treat these conditions, it's a team effort between a surgeon and an orthodontist. So the surgeon fixes the skeletal problem, and then the orthodontist has to
Or
fix
the teeth and the jaw.
fix the teeth and the jaw.
Hmm. Is there something new and revolutionary coming in orthodontistry? Or is it all still bind them up, hold them down for a while?
Yeah, basically, I mean, there's a lot, Invisalign,
Yeah.
those clear retainers, they're improving a lot, so you see a lot more of that going on.
Mm-hmm.
There's this whole new field of airway orthodontics, which kind of goes into what I'm researching. So how the position of the teeth and jaws affects the airway. So that's kind of a new field that's emerging.
And for families, they have to make sure they understand that, because if they don't, they'll be in the multiple surgery category,
Right.
okay?